What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Athletics Fantasy Cheat Sheet brought to you by JockMKT. Happy holidays and happy final week of the fantasy season heading into week 16. Congratulations to those who have made it this far. And if you haven't, thanks for watching anyways. We have another special guest this week. There he is, award-winning fantasy and betting sports writer and head of FTN Bets, Benny Ricciardi, and Athletics senior fantasy sports writer and expert in all things movies, shows, memes, and more. There's Jake Ciely. I'm Claudia Bellofatto. What's up, guys? How we doing? Happy holidays.
How about those intros, Benny? You get like supersized intros this year.
People have to know who you guys are. You're important people. They need to know.
Mildly.
I like the get up, Benny. All right, guys, let's start. What's that?
What? Well, I was going to say, I would have to tell my wife about that important people thing. We'll see if she
You tell her. Claudia said you're important.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts. He was the number one scoring quarterback in Week 15 with a little over 41 fantasy points. A rough go for Carson Wentz, watching all of the glory from the sideline. Benny, let's start with you. Head coach Doug Peterson did confirm Hurts will start the Eagles matchup in Week 16 against Dallas, whose defense is allowing the second most total points per game this season at 30.9. How much trust can one have in Hurts at quarterback if their fantasy championship title is on the line, which for many of them it will be?
I mean, I think you got to have a lot of trust in him. Last week, I was wrong. And I will admit that I was wrong. I said Mitch Trubisky over Jalen Hurts, and then Jalen Hurts goes out and throws for, 330 and another 60 on the ground, 3 touchdowns in the air, another touchdown on the ground. Put up like 40 fantasy points last week. I mean, hey, the guy's very, very good. So I have no trouble starting him this week because it's an even softer defense that he's playing this week against Dallas. I mean, I would basically start Jake against Dallas. So I'm definitely going to be starting Dallas.
You wouldn't want to do that, Benny. I got tunnel vision. Well, that's why I sucked at basketball and football. That's why baseball and golf. Don't ask me like all of a sudden I can't see anything. But I had Trubisky in front of Hurts too. I was worried about the passing. That's really what it came down to. And so Hurts was top 15-ish for me last week. But I'm with you at this point. At least the rushing is going to keep him involved. There's only probably 5 or 6 guys that I would start in front of him at this point. And one of them is not Russell Wilson. I'm starting over Russ. You see how I teed you up there?
Thank you. Thanks for that, Jake.
Even though you started with Benny, and whose show is this? This is the Nando and Jake show.
Guest. He's the special guest. You're supposed to put the special guest. I put thought into it, Jake, okay? Who's the host here? Just kidding. All right, yes. Not something I thought I'd be saying this year, but there's not as much trust in Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson, who has had 15 or fewer fantasy points in 4 of the last 6 games. Jake, you mentioned it. Wilson now facing the Rams in Week 16, who he scored just 9.9 points against in Week 10. So where's your confidence level at with Wilson? Jake, now's your time to shine.
I think you could bench Russell Wilson. He's not even going to be a QB1 for me this week, mostly because it's not just the matchup with the Rams. It's also the fact that they're not letting him cook. Really what it comes down to is he has to do it in a fast food fashion. It has to be 20 attempts and he throws 3 touchdowns and they're just running the ball. They're grinding out the clock. As Benny knows with betting, this is my other concern in this game as a whole is just the pace of play is going to be slower. There's going to be fewer snaps, fewer opportunities. So I would hate to see Russell Wilson put up 25 on my bench, but I don't think 25 is feasible this week, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, basically, with the exception of the New York Jets, the Rams basically shut down everybody else that they play for some reason. So I don't know.
Benny, Phil said you look like you're about to break into Macaulay Culkin's house. That's a good one, Phil. Best comment so far. Yeah. All right, Nihal China, pick 2 half PPR, McKissick, Ahmed, Snell, Cup, or Sanders.
I'm assuming that's Miles Sanders. So
Benny Snell, I'm going to take.
No, it's Emmanuel Sanders.
Emmanuel Sanders.
Oh, Benny, you can take this question because I'm telling the whole to check the link later this week because Ahmed's situation is up in the air. Snell's situation is up in the air. So,
yeah. I mean, well, that was kind of what I was going to say with the Benny Snell thing. Everything I'm reading today says that James Conner is going to give it a go. Listen, Benny Snell was actually the one Pittsburgh Steeler who looked like he wanted to win that game the other night. So I don't know if putting Conner back in there is actually a positive or not. But if he's going to play, you can't play Snell. Again, like you said, Ahmed, you're going to have to wait until you see what happens with the other guys and who's going to play for the Dolphins because Gesicki, Devontae Parker, and Myles Gaskins are all trending towards playing from the stuff I'm hearing right now. I think you start Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is definitely going to be on that list. Sanders, do I really want to go that against Minnesota? You know what? That might be the other guy that I go there. I might go Kupp and Sanders there.
Tad, Reed wants to know Baker Mayfield or Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Jake said sit Russell.
The Baker's baking. Russell's not cooking.
Lane Harden wants to know, can we trust/start Logan Thomas with all the Washington quarterback stuff going on?
Even if it's Heineke, which, by the way, represent ODU. So even if it's Heineke, look, Logan Thomas is the second wide receiver, and yes, wide receiver on that team. So he's going to be involved no matter what.
Yeah.
Michael Beller, Jake loves thinking that teeing up his co-host is the greatest thing someone can do for someone else.
Shows the appreciation.
I'm loving these comments. Speaking of wide receivers, those who played Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen in Week 15 likely disappointed with him playing less than half of the snaps in their win over the Raiders due to a hamstring injury. His status unclear heading into Week 16. Benny, what can we expect from Allen if he does play?
I mean, I wish I could tell you guys. What we know is what we got to make our decision on, right? We know that last week he played 24 of 66 snaps. That's not good. We also know, though, that they played that game on a Thursday. So he's got 10 full days to get ready for their next game here. So basically the best advice I can give to people right now is you're going to have to follow the injury reports and see what they say, because a 24-snap, 3-target Keenan Allen is not somebody that you want in your lineup right now. But if you're going to get him playing, 60 of the 66 snaps like he normally does, then definitely he's going to be somebody that you want in your lineup.
What if he yells into the camera, "Don't sit me"?
Well, if he yells into the camera, don't sit him, based on last week, I mean, we only have one data point there, but you sit him if that's the case, because he said it last week and went 1 for 3. I think he had 1 catch for 17 yards on 3 targets. So, hopefully he practices. Hopefully they don't have him on that pitch count like they said. And if that's the case, then you start him. But if you hear anything about a pitch count or him being limited again, I don't know how you can start a part-time wide receiver when your entire season is on the line in Week 16.
All right, keep an eye out for his status. Kansas City Chiefs running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire out for the playoffs with hip and ankle injuries. Enter his replacement, Le'Veon Bell, who did have his best game of the season despite getting roughed up a little bit himself. Doesn't seem like that'll be an issue, though, against the Saints in Week 15 with 14.6 PPR points. Other than that, you could argue Bell hasn't been of much use to fantasy managers this season. With Helaire out in Week 16, how does this boost the value of Bell heading into this next matchup against the Falcons? The Falcons have given up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running back. So, Jake, where do you see Bell's value heading into Week 16?
He's a must pick up just to block other people. You don't want to run into a Leonard Fournette type game where he runs for 2 touchdowns on 45 yards, but that's really what it is. I don't think he's a must start if you've got better options, because Falcons' run defense is good. They're really easy to pass on. So Patrick Mahomes could have 350 and 4 touchdowns this week. But the other problem on top of it is if the Falcons do keep pace and push the pace in this, Darrell Williams is the passing game option as much as Le'Veon Bell is a pass catcher. To his own credit, they use Darrell Williams. So I think you could be looking at 13, 14 total touches. And in that case, I don't want to start him against the Falcons' run defense, even if he falls into the end zone for a touchdown.
Hey, can I throw something in here? I just want to say sorry to all the Jets fans in the Jets chat room at the end of the season, because I told you guys that you were crazy for telling me that Le'Veon Bell was going to get a ring this year. You guys might have been right. I'm not going to lie to you. You might have been right.
I thought you were going to say sorry to the Jets fans for getting a win.
That would have worked too. GT Binna? I don't know about that one, but happy holidays, guys and gals. Crazy to consider Kittle if practicing over McLaurin Geo in standard flex spot.
Because it's in flex, there's no reason to risk Kittle. But who's your other tight end that you wouldn't just plug in Kittle? Kittle's a top 5 tight end if he's back. I'll take the risk with that because tight end's miserable.
Yeah, and I mean, even with him out, you've also been getting, Jordan Reed resurgence coming back. He had another touchdown the other day too. So, San Francisco likes to throw to the tight end. Kittle's going to be involved, and like Jake said, who's your other tight? Unless your other tight end is like Travis Kelce, I don't see why you play Kittle.
I don't know.
All right. Speaking of running back injuries and replacements, Panthers running back Christian McCaffrey dealing with a thigh injury, his third different injury this season. He was inactive in Week 15. He's questionable heading into Week 16 against Washington. We've seen Mike Davis in that RB2 spot as a fill-in. He has yet to exceed 64 rushing yards this season. Some argue his workload has been limited by game script. Either way, heading into Week 16, Benny, how should fantasy managers approach this decision in terms of playing McCaffrey or Davis?
Well, we've already seen this happen once, right? Like McCaffrey played, I think, the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. Then he was out for 6 or 7 weeks and then came back in Week 9. When he came back in Week 9 after being out for a month and a half, he had 18 carries and 10 targets. So he had 28 touches in that game. If Christian McCaffrey is playing, they're going to feed him the ball. So if Christian McCaffrey is playing, you're playing Christian McCaffrey. If he's out, I mean, then you got to look at it and say, all right, well, who are my other options? If Mike Davis is the best you got, then I guess you got to roll him out there. But if McCaffrey plays, you're plugging him into your lineup. If McCaffrey plays, first off, if you're still alive with McCaffrey playing, he was your number 1 overall pick. Congratulations. Your team must have been amazing. I don't know how the hell you pulled that off. But if you do have him and he's playing this week, I think you got to plug him into your lineup.
Another keeping eye on status reports. Cowboys running back Tony Pollard came in big in Week 15 after Zeke was a surprise late scratch with a calf injury. Pollard came away with 31.2 points in PPR leagues with a pair of touchdowns on 12 carries for 69 yards in the win over the 49ers. My first question, Jake, this is a double-barreled question. I'm going to ask you the first one. Is Pollard a must-start in Week 16 against the Eagles if Zeke is out?
He's a must start, but I don't know if I would expect the top 10 performance again, because if you looked at it, that second touchdown when he got rushing the ball was the 49ers were selling out just to stop it. They were hoping that they still had a chance in that game, and they sold out to stop the run. Make 1 or 2 guys miss when you have a package like that, and you're gone, and that's what happened with Pollard. Before that, he wasn't even averaging 3 yards a carry. The offensive line for the Cowboys, whether it's Zeke or Pollard or anybody, is miserable right now. So he's going to have to do it in the passing game to get that full-on value. He'll be a top 20 running back if Zeke is out, but don't expect top 10. Like, I wouldn't be still benching. Everybody might overreact from that game and be like, well, I'll bench Chris Carson in a bad matchup. I wouldn't go that far, but he's in play as top 20 again.
Well, speaking of Zeke, he's averaged only 10.2 points per game since Dak Prescott went down. So here's my second question, Jake. Do you trust Pollard even if Zeke is back?
No, I don't, because if they let Zeke play, Zeke is still the guy. So now you're talking about splitting 25 touches between the two. You probably get 15 and 10. And as I just mentioned, that offensive line is doing them no favors. I wouldn't even, honestly, I don't know if I'd even trust Zeke. I think that Zeke would even be on my bench in a lot of leagues.
Phil wants to know, I have $1 to spend to block the Zeke owner. He has 0. Should I pick up Bell or Henderson in a half-point PPR league?
Ooh. I'd block Henderson for the upside. I think he has the higher ceiling than Bell. Benny?
I mean, Bell. The thing with Bell is that he's going to get the goal line touches because they used him a lot in the red zone last week. So
they did.
That makes me a little nervous right there.
Go Bell and hopefully get Henderson for 0 too.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely put a waiver claim in for both of them and drop 2 guys that drop that extra defense you've been holding for 4 weeks for some reason.
Brian Funk wants to know, I lost J-Rob this week. Who should I flex? Kiki, Tim Patrick, Malcolm Brown, Tevin Coleman in a standard league.
You sure that's not Fred Dersh? Benny knows what I'm talking about. Malcolm Brown hasn't been healthy. Like, even there's no Akers, he's still been banged up. Tevin Coleman, no, it's going to be Jeff Wilson. So now it's their wide receivers. So QT if you need the floor, Patrick if you need the ceiling.
Yeah, I'd probably go.
No, because the link isn't posted. No.
You'll have to wait.
Yeah, we'll see. Go ahead.
No, Benny, we were moving on to the next question already. You can still answer the.
Oh, okay. Hurts for Tannehill? Ooh, I'm gonna go Hurts this week. That Dallas matchup is just too juicy not to try to take advantage of.
Bench cut for Pollard if Zeke sits half point.
Yes.
Yeah, agree.
All right, both of you guys, pick one pair of receivers from the following. 49ers, Richie James and Kendrick Bourne. Houston Texans, Kiki QT and Chad Hansen. Or Browns, Rashard Higgins and Donovan People-Jones. Benny, you first. You've got to pick one of the pairs.
All right, so I'm going to go with Kendrick Bourne over Richie James. Even though Richie James saw more targets last week, And I'll tell you the reason why. I think it was late in the fourth quarter. James actually went out with a little bit of an ankle injury, so I'm a little bit concerned about his status for this week. Kendrick Bourne, though, I honestly think James had the better game than Kendrick Bourne, even though everybody was kind of touting Kendrick Bourne last week. If you take away that, 50-yard, last-second
garbage.
Yeah, that he got. I mean, I think he had 18 fantasy points. 12 of it came on that play with the touchdown on the 49 yards. So it's not like I feel really good about this Kendrick Bourne call, but at least I know that Kendrick Bourne is not hurt. Whereas Richie James, I'm a little bit dicey on that right now. So I'll go Kendrick Bourne in the top.
You got to pick the other two, too.
All right, so the other two are easy.
Kuti or Hansen?
Yeah, I mean, Kiki Kuti over Hansen. I don't even think that's a question right there. And then even the last one, I'm still going to go Higgins over Donovan People-Jones. And basically, Jones is like the high variance deep target for that team. So they may throw 2 or 3 deep balls to him, but if he catches them, he could have a huge game. But if he doesn't catch them, he's the guy that winds up with 1 for 3 or 1 for 4 for 28 yards or something like that. So to me, the safer route is going with Higgins there, who's been very good since Odell Beckham went out.
I apologize. You worked out the questions very well because I'm glad Benny got to ask this because my answer is check the link, check the link, check the link. So.
All right, Jake, fine.
I will say one thing. The 49ers now are down to CJ Beathard with no backup quarterback. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I would avoid both of them if possible. But Higgins is of all those, Higgins should be top 30 to begin with. Mm-hmm. I'm scoffing at my own question. Sorry to cut you off.
Brian Anderson, thanks for unanimously recommending Trubisky over Hurts for Sunday morning. Cost me a shot at the title.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Be sure to check the link next time.
We already answered that one, so let's go. Giants coming off a 20-6 loss against the Browns in Week 15, heading into a matchup against the Ravens in Week 16. If anywhere, where do you see the value left in this team, Jake?
There is nothing. Sterling Shepard, if you need a floor, the end. Ingram only because tight end is desperate. I mean, you're going to have to probably start Ingram. But now that backfield is turned into a committee, you can't even use Gallman anymore. So I don't even really know what to say. I'm sorry, I just read Nando's comment at the same time when I know he's referencing that person who thanked us and said, be sure to check the link again.
Benny, do you agree? Any value left in the Giants?
Not really. I mean, my favorite part of the Giants, for fantasy at least, is actually their defense, and this is not the week you want to roll them out against Baltimore. But I'm surprised Jake didn't mention Pro Bowler Evan Ingram. Come on.
I did. You weren't paying attention.
Oh, did you say he was useful?
Yeah.
You got to be able to use them, right?
Check the tape. Oh. I did say.
This one goes out to fantasy managers unsure what to do with your Panthers receivers in Week 16. Looking at Week 15 in a loss against the Packers, we saw DJ Moore return from COVID-19 reserve list and go off for 131 yards from 6 catches. Robbie Anderson, on the other hand, had his worst game of the year with a season low in targets, receptions, and yards. And Curtis Samuel hasn't reached 100 yards since Week 9. The Panthers up against Washington in Week 16, who have allowed the second fewest points to fantasy wide receivers on this season. Benny, how should managers approach this receiving trio between Moore, Anderson, and Samuel if their championship title is on the line?
Well, you should hope that you have some other options here, because if you look at last week against Seattle, I mean, Russ only went, I think he was 18 for 27 for, it was under 150 yards or something like that. You had DK Metcalf, who had 5 catches for 40-something yards, and then Lockett had 3 catches for 30-something yards. This is just not the defense that you want to go against right now. They have an unbelievable pass rush. Their secondary is pretty decent. They've at least been able to hold a lot of people down here. I would hope that you have another option. And then we talked about Christian McCaffrey before. If McCaffrey's going to come in and take 28 touches for a team that runs 60 plays a game, there's not a lot left that's going to go around for these wide receivers. So hopefully you have some better options. If not, you gotta hope that you get a little bit of that Christmas luck in there.
Jake, you agree? Anything to add on there?
I was too busy playing with Barkley. Sorry, but
okay.
I probably Benny's a smart guy. I probably agree.
Thank you, Kevin. Said I'm a great host. For starters, no 50. Oh, all right, Nando, put it down too quickly. All right, Nando, quick there with the buttons. No 15-minute sidebars on Bazooka Joe Bubblegum.
That's a shot at Nando.
Oh, come on. We love Nando. We miss Nando. Yeah, I'm with Brian. Thanks for not telling me that McCaffrey was going to be hurt all year. I would have taken him number 1 overall. Should have check the link. If anything, you guys remember, check the link. And no Gio Bernard and no Ito Smith. Lost James Conner, James Robinson, and Clyde.
I'm assuming that's thoughts on. I'm backwards typing. Yeah,
Oh,
I would go Gio too. I don't know what the hell was going on 2 weeks ago with the benching with the fumble that made no sense, but they just went to him almost the entire game against Pittsburgh. I don't expect the Bengals to have a lead. They're like ever again, probably for the rest of the year. But between that and Ito Smith, I also don't expect anybody to want to touch that Falcons backfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bengals only had like 7 completed passes the other night anyway, and then Gio had like 24 carries or something like that. So, listen, I don't know how they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they're going to try to use the same blueprint again. I don't see them throwing the ball 40 times here unless they have to. So, he's going to get fed. Whether or not he does anything, that's another story.
Vanessa says, yeah. Phil, better defense this week. No versus Mini or Chicago at Jacks. New Orleans versus Minnesota or Chicago at Jacks.
It's Chicago, and it's not even close. James Robinson may not play in that game. And, again, Gardner Minshew is going to throw the ball 45 times. Good luck.
Well, Gardner Minshew at this point has 0 Fs at this point, so he is going to take chances and turnovers.
I'm like, what? 0 Fs.
This is a family show, Claudia.
I know.
Hopefully he does have 0 Fs and throws a couple touchdowns and gets the Jags another win, because that would put the Jets back in the driver's seat for Trevor Lawrence and make it a very Merry Christmas for me.
Yes, Browns. Yes, Browns against the Jets over the Steelers. As crazy as that might be.
Oh, no, absolutely not. The Jets are horrendous. I still don't know how they beat the Rams.
And a 40-14 blowout win over Jacksonville in Week 15. The Ravens head into Week 16 for a matchup against the Giants. Ravens wide receiver Marquise Brown scored 12-plus fantasy points in the last 4 games. Jake, how do you expect Brown to shape up for this last week?
I think he's ready to disappoint people, honestly. Bradbury's back for the Giants. Bradbury's been a top 10 corner this year, and he's not going to worry about Miles Boykin. He's not going to worry about anybody else, Devin Duvernay, whoever it might be. So you're going to see Mark Andrews because the Giants can't defend the middle of the field. You're going to see J.K. Dobbins outside because they can't defend runners outside. They've got essentially 3 defensive tackles playing on defensive line. So you attack them with J.K. Dobbins, Mark Andrews, and the other issue that I have here goes back to the Seattle one. The Giants are actually bottom of the league at letting opponents touch the ball because they are so slow to begin with, and their defense is pretty good. So few opportunities. He would have to hit it on probably – he might only get 5 targets in this game.
Jake, blink twice or once. Parth over tail, blink twice.
Well, it doesn't say once for Tannehill, so I don't know how many blinks that might be. I will say this. If you got this far with Tannehill and you don't want to risk it, if your team is that good, don't risk Hurts. I love Hurts. I do, admittedly. Benny and I, we talked about it last week. I am a big Hurts fan. I'm concerned with his reading progressions because that's why he's going to take sacks. You want a sneaky DFS team? It could go horribly wrong. The Cowboys could put up negative fantasy points. But if you want a sneaky DFS team, the Dallas Cowboys in DFS, because they're like 2,400 or something like that, Benny, you can look at them for getting sacks with Hurts and potentially a turnover. On the flip side, his ceiling is better than Tannehill. So it comes down to your lineup decision at this point. They'll be in the same group.
Hey, Tannehill had a big game last week too. So I mean, there are a lot of good. There's a lot of good numbers when Tannehill starts this year as well. So I mean, Hurts. The thing with Hurts is that the legs for any quarterback just gives them a nice floor with those rushing yards. So even if he just does if he has a decent game, but he also rushes for 50 yards, he could easily wind up outscoring Tannehill, who throws for 270 and 2 touchdowns or something like that.
Okay.
They want to know, I need to dump Big Ben for basically anyone right now, right? Question mark.
I mean, how have you not already at this point?
I mean, there's honestly, you have a lot of quarterback options out there right now. So we've had people get hurt. Look, Marcus Mariota is a decent guy out there.
Look, I know, Benny, I know people just got burned, but Trubisky's facing Jacksonville. I would switch. Look, I would. Here, top streamers for my column this week. Hurts, obviously. Mayfield, Trubisky, Stafford, Minshew, Rivers, Mariota, all of them over Ben. You can even make a case for Cam Newton, maybe even Tua against Vegas. Like, you're just not starting Ben at this point. His arm is burnt. It's done.
Yeah, agree. I mean, that's
Benny,
part of the problem
that
with
question for you. But it's just not flashing so many things by.
Benny, this one's for you from Night Ghost. Eagles minus 135, the best value bet of the week? Question mark?
The Ghost is actually my boy. I love this guy. Him and I are actually friends on Twitter. I would say this. I honestly my numbers actually have Dallas should be favored in this game by minus 1 point. So I actually like the opposite side of this. I'm on the opposite side of this one, Ghost. I took Dallas at plus 110 over on FanDuel already here today. Dallas technically still has a chance to make the playoffs and win the NFC East if they win these next 2 games and Washington loses out. And I think the Giants have to lose one of the last 2 as well. So they need some help, but the important part is they have to win. So
how many times are you going to put up? No.
Vanessa agrees with all of this, so.
Good for you.
If no one has any more questions, you guys have any more advice for anyone heading into this championship? That we didn't cover? Any last words?
My last words would be play your stuff. Play the guys, whatever the guys that got you to the dance are, make sure those guys are in your lineup, because the last thing you want to do is not play one of those guys and watch him go off for $150 and 2 touchdowns this week while he's sitting on your bench and, you played him for 15 weeks of the season to get up here to this point.
That's my advice.
And check the room.
Did you just get that shipped to you? Where did that come
No,
from?
I have a whole bunch of these T-shirts. I can send you one.
Okay, thank you. All right, guys, don't forget to follow Benny at BennyR11 and Jake at Allen Kid and me at Bellofatto TV. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and good luck to everyone this week. Thanks for watching.